Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is award-winning actress Carole Cook and artist-sculptor John Rose. Musical phenomenon Carole Cook was born and raised in Abilene, Texas. She'll lead you on that sweet, coy little Texas sweetness, but she's a perfectly mannered woman, you know, all those Texas traits, but she's no dummy. She graduated from Baylor University with a degree in Greek drama. She's played in Broadway musicals like 42nd Street, Hello Dolly, Mame, Stop the World, Annie Get Your Gun, Get Your Gun. Then Best Acting Awards in dramatic acting and theater for, what was it, Father's Day, Steel Magnolias, The Lion in Winter with your husband Tom Troop. How is this little sweetie weetie from Abilene so come to Hollywood and make a name for herself?
Well, in the first place, Joan, I don't know where you got the information that I was sweet. Wrong. No, I fought that all my life, and I was very successful about fighting the sweetness.
But isn't that true? The Texas, as soon as you talk with an accent, they think you're like Miss Sweetie.
I know it. I always say, I was brought up in Abilene, Texas. I come from Texas, but you can't hardly tell it now.
Right.
I plumb lost my accent.
That's
a lot of people think I'm English or affected. But in fact, the accent, I must say, if I get very tired or, you know, if we go home to visit, my husband, Tom Troop, always says, I cannot understand a word you're saying.
You just fall right into it.
Yeah, you fall right into it.
So how did you get to Hollywood?
By bus. No, I went to New York. I always wanted the theater. I never really thought about movies or television. It was always the theater, the theater. And my mother used to drive to Dallas, Texas, and that was 200 miles away from where we lived. And we saw Helen Hayes in Candle in the Wind. I saw the Luntz in There Shall Be No Night. All of those, Katharine Cornell. So my mother certainly had no thought of my being in the theater. She just thought, she was sort of like a rural Auntie Mame. She thought it opened doors to our minds.
Did, huh?
And
she was putting information into.
And that's why she did it. Certainly didn't think of my going into the theater. But I took to it like that, Joan. I saw those costumes and I said, that's for me. So all my life I feel like I've been playing dress up.
And you did a movie called Dress Up. I mean, you did a play.
Yes, I did a one-woman show called Dress Up because that's what I've done. Now, sometimes it's dressed down. You have to, you know, have terrible costumes, but it's being somebody else. It's really not being, it's being you if you were born that person.
But you have a personality that's your own personality. Usually people who want to go on stage and be somebody else are not so adept at being able to talk like we're talking.
Well, that's true. I think that's just the difference in people. Some people are very glib, others are not.
I mean, you can carry on without a script.
And without a brain cell working. I mean, ask me any question, I'll have an opinion on it.
You threw me. I couldn't even read the opening today.
I noticed that, Joan. That wasn't good reading, sweetheart.
Well, tell me what happened with Greek drama. Why Greek drama?
Well, I managed to overcome the Greek drama. I did Medea for my...
Did you?
Yes, for my dissertation and all of that. But I went to New York, and I wasn't there that long. And Lucille Ball heard about me and brought me to California.
And she heard about you. What were you doing?
Well, it was what she was doing, not so much what I was doing. She had a group called the Desilu Workshop. and it was filled with you know, people wanting to get into the movies or television.
I see.
And she said they were going to put on a show like the Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney. Gee, kids, why don't we do a show? And she said, we don't have a comedian that I like. And Bob Osborne, who does Turner Class, was in the group. And he's remembered, he and his friend remembered seeing me in New York in a little club where I won a contest. And they said, there's a girl named Mildred Cook that I think you would like.
Oh, you were Mildred Cook.
Oh, would I kid a
Mildred
blind
Frances
girl?
Cook.
Yes, it was Mildred Frances Cook. So anyway, she sent for me. I came out here, and I stayed. They put me under contract, and she changed my name to Carole for Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard was her idol, Lucy's idol.
And Lucy was such a great actress, wasn't she?
Lucy, I always felt, had a great acting job in her. She never did fulfill that.
No.
But I
she
always
was
felt
great.
that she was just so brilliantly talented.
But I think she just made it with that timing and with those facial characters, and
That's
the
right.
comedy
And you see,
came.
Lucy was a clown, you know, a lot of physical. That's why today her shows, it doesn't depend on the dialogue. She was a physical comedian and a clown.
Well, talking about the physical, I'm going to get you back to Dress Up. What kind of a play was that? It was a one-woman show. And was it physical in regards of
yes.
having to?
Well, I did it's really about my journey through life. It's certainly, I'm not, you know, pushy enough to do a career. It was about growing up in Texas. It was about having a grandmother who thought I was a mess. It was really about my experiences.
Who wrote it?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yes.
So it was obviously
Yes,
autobiographical.
autobiographical.
And
Yes.
so where did it stop?
It stopped with my death. No, not Joan.
What are you doing to me today, Carole? I can't tell. You know,
I'm not a well woman, Joan. It stops. Really, just kind of. I don't make it stop with any particular show because again, it's not about the show. Kind of stops with my marriage and that kind
Oh, I
of
see. So
thing.
it was more personal, interest.
Oh yeah. It's more about everyday life.
Okay,
you know.
so we're talking about stage and drama and acting classes.
Yes.
And then here you were in the movies, American Gigolo,
Yes.
16
I
Candles.
was the first woman to go to bed with you know who.
Who was American Gigolo?
I knew you were going to say
Richard Gere.
Richard Gere.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Jim Bridges directed.
Oh,
Brilliant.
We had so much fun on that, and Richard Gere was wonderful to work.
He's such a great guy, isn't he?
And it was fabulous.
So, and then 16 Candles?
16 Candles, and
Was that the scary one?
no,
or was
no,
that the coming of
16
age
Candles, the
one?
coming of age
Oh,
one.
right.
And I was I love it because I do my one-woman show on university campuses a lot, and they always can quote my lines. In that, when I look at the girl, I say, "Oh, she's got her boobies," and there's the perky.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, they loved. 16 Candles with John Hughes was a ball, just a ball.
So you really worked with great directors.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And you're like a stage person.
And the writer director Paul Schrader, who did American Gigolo. Yes, I've had. You know what? I've had the best of all. I've loved the movies. I love television, but the theater is certainly my first love.
So, the theater. We're back to the theater because you're like the first woman who's followed Carol Channing and Ethel Merman in their plays.
Yes.
On the road or on Broadway or
I was a second dolly. I did it in Australia for 2 years. I followed Carol Channing. Carol Channing was doing it in New York. I was the second dolly in the world.
How did you know Carol?
No, I met her when they flew me to New York from here to meet them and to
but they just
sing for them.
You auditioned,
yes,
obviously.
I knew Mike Stewart and Jerry Herman, who music in the book, and so they flew me in there. They had recommended me, so I flew into New York and did it. And I got to know Carole there, of course.
And then what about, do you know her now to this
Oh,
day?
very well.
Oh,
yes.
I wondered if
Oh,
you
she's
did.
a wonderful woman.
Because she lives in our community. Oh, now she doesn't live in our community,
Well,
does
she's
she?
married, my darling, now.
I know, isn't that
and
great?
lives in,
San
I
Francisco?
started to say Modesto. I could be wrong
San
about
Jose,
We better
maybe.
not spread that since
Yeah.
I have no idea. what
Northern California.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And then what about Ethel
And Ethel
Merman?
Merman was a great friend of mine.
Oh, she was.
You know, what's wonderful, Joan, is to know talented people. Some are famous, some are not. I think people in the arts, talent is very seductive.
And I
we
think-
like talented people.
Right.
And I've been very lucky that I've known Ethel Merman, Lucille Ball, Carole, those people, and many others who are not as famous.
But they're the support group. They're as talented in their own ways.
Oh.
That's what I always think.
Oh, yes. And my husband stayed with Uta Hagen. I worked with Julie Harris.
Talking about your Julie Harris, who was in the
Yes.
gin game with your husband.
With my husband.
And then you were in another play
yes,
with her?
we co-starred in Ladies in Retirement.
Oh, you did?
Together. One of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had.
But talk about Tom Troop, who's a terrific actor and director. You and he won the 2002 Ovation Award.
Ovation for
in
career achievement.
Career achievement. Can you imagine? It was the first time they'd ever given it.
Yes.
To a husband and wife.
To a couple. And all I could think of growing up was I loved the Luntz, Alfred Lunt, Lynn Fontanne. So I'm always calling us the Polish Luntz.
Oh, where'd you get the Polish from?
Well, I made that up.
You made
in an effort to be amusing, Joan.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But it was a thrill for us. I cannot tell you, with the honors we've gotten, that is probably, you know, the most mean. Tom and I worked together in The Lion in Winter.
Yeah, I was just going to ask
We did
what it
Father's Day, Oliver Haley's Father's Day.
But you got that, you got the ovation for Lion in Winter, right?
Yes.
You were
well, that
playing it
wasn't,
then?
the ovation was just for career achievement.
Oh, for the whole thing.
Yeah, for the whole thing.
Do you continue to hone your skills? Do you still
Of course,
sing?
every time I walk on the stage, I'm honing my skill.
But are you
if you'll pardon that expression.
Are you taking classes?
No, I don't take classes, but we work constantly, you know, and I've worked with AIDS.
You do a lot of AIDS
Yeah.
fundraisers, and before we leave, why don't you just tell us, every time I call you, you're going to rehearsal for something with Jason
That's right.
Or
the stage benefit, which is March. I do Actors Fund of America. I go to San Francisco. These are the ones that I do consistently.
and you raise so much money.
Oh,
for,
we've raised a lot. And you know what's wonderful about people, show business people, whatever they say, they honestly come through. I mean, you would not believe the talent that are on the shows that we do.
It's really, every time I've called you, you've been off to do something, or if I've called any of the other people on stage, that the first thing is that benefit, rather than come and do publicity for themselves or do an interview.
Oh, yeah.
They want to be right there.
And you know, you work as hard as if you're being paid $1 million.
And you're getting paid.
You still are out there sparkling.
But you're
know?
making $1 million for a good cause.
Oh, I don't regret a moment of it.
Yeah.
And
Carole?
the Actors Fund is the same.
Oh, you do that too.
Yeah, all of them.
Carole, I don't know how you have time to do everything, but I'm so happy that you came on the show today.
Well, it's been a ball. And John Rose wouldn't mind me wearing this as a
I think
pin.
he'd probably love that as a pin.
It's
maybe
what we
an
call
earring.
suck up.
And John Rose is coming on right
I
after
know,
you.
and it's brilliant. I love it. I love it. But thank you, Joan.
Thank
I've
you.
loved it.
And don't go away, because John Rose will be back and Carole Cook won't be wearing it.
This may be gone.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with artist John Rose, whose beautiful sculptures are on the set today, and you've seen them during Carole's part of the show too. John was born and raised in England. He now lives in Venice, California. He's had several solo shows in California, and his work is in the collection of many Far Eastern museums. And John, did you go to art school?
I went to regular art school in England,
did?
went through the whole gamut, lived and worked all over England, always looking for the next best gig.
What did you want to be?
As a kid growing up, I
artist?
always wanted to be an artist. I mean, I guess most people, by the time they get to 11, stop making art, but you know.
And when did you start?
I'd been making stuff ever since I was a little child.
Oh,
so,
you were?
Yeah.
But were you going to be a painter or a sculptor?
It was always drawing, and I was a painter. I became a painter. I went through the normal channels, and my paintings then grew three-dimensionally until they got so large they came off the canvas, and then the next step was form, and then no color, and it was sculpture.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Just followed a progression. But
It was a
that
progression.
had to be
Over several years.
20 years, huh?
Well, yeah,
About?
over the last 30 years.
Over 30 years.
I'm younger than I look. Older than I look.
Older than you look, younger than you look.
I'm backdated.
Whatever. But that is how, I guess, a sculpture starts. Because these things are, everyone's been talking about them, and they think they're balsa wood, they think they're different things, but I knew better because I saw them at Robert Berman Gallery,
Right.
and I knew that they were bent wood, and you were telling me about the process of these things. I want to actually talk about this sculpture first before we even do anything else.
Right.
So how do you get wood to bend like this?
Well, I buy long pieces of wood. I buy planks of wood from the lumberyard, and I use poplar because it's a very malleable wood. It bends very easily.
The color's great, too.
Color is gorgeous on it. It's very blonde, but a subtle blonde. I machine them up into very long, thin pieces.
So you slice them up.
I slice them
You
up.
slice
I
them up
slice
this-
them, I dice them. And then I soak them in hot water and make tight little circles of them and clamp them up and leave them like dry for 4 or 5 days.
How long does this have to sit in water?
It sits in water for about half an hour, 45
That's
minutes.
all? And you can bend
right.
it like
And then you can
this?
bend it like that. It's very hot water, just super hot water.
Like this? I think this is so great.
They're
And
fun.
so what would we do with something like this piece?
Well, once
thin piece.
once I've got a lot of this, I can then start to build a form. I just brought this along today to show you basically how these forms are built. There's a geometrical structure inside, very much like a airplane wing, only it's a bent one. So there are ribs and there are spars.
So those little skinny pieces are the parts that are holding
Right.
this together like
This
that.
goes all the way around.
Those little skinny pieces. And then this
Is
is
inside,
inside the big
the
piece
big
in
one.
the back.
right.
And then what do you cover this? So these are like these little pieces, and then it's covered with...
It's covered with a skin of poplar, also a poplar plywood, which is a blonde, very lightweight wood, but it has a really nice quality to it.
How do you put the pieces together? Because there's several pieces.
There are many, many pieces in there, and I glue them and staple them together. So when the glue's set, pull the staples out, fill the holes,
Do you-
sand it down until it's very nice and smooth. It's very tactile. The wood is, I like people to touch them because they're very, very seductive, and there's a sensuality about them.
So the wood keeps getting sanded until you...
Keeps getting
because
sanded.
they're kind of different colors, I
It
guess,
does, yeah.
depending on
There
the
are different kind of
sanding.
gradations of blondness throughout.
Do you put any kind of finishes on
I
them?
put a very simple marine sealer over it, which is then rubbed down so that it takes the gloss off it and it becomes matte again.
So I wouldn't get my greasy fingers.
Well, you could just wipe it off. You can spill coffee on it and just wipe it off.
These are table pieces. In the gallery, pieces like, pieces like this were on the huge 4 feet.
Right, 4 and
And-
5 feet and 10 feet. There's a couple which are very, very big in the gallery, about 12 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet. But there's a lot of...
And they just go on the wall?
There's a lot of wall pieces which are much bigger, which I couldn't bring today because they're way too big to bring out. But they fit on the wall. They're not heavy. They're very lightweight.
That's what's so great. And there's just this kind of ethereal feel about them because they are so lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
They look heavy, and when you're in the gallery, they look like, you know, you can't touch them. And yet you had this big one and you were rolling it back and forth. And
Well, they're kind of playful in a way, particularly the floor pieces, because they do move. There's a kind of kinetic quality about it.
so we start with painting. We get your career as a painter. Then it comes off the canvas. And what were you painting?
I was painting circles for years and years and years. The circle's always been there as the kind of basis.
Representational or not?
No, they were always abstracted forms.
They were always, I see.
Way, way, way back many years ago when I was just a tiny thing, they were about figures, but the figure kind of got
But the
evolved
circles
out.
then just kind of kept evolving, it looks like.
Evolving, spirals. It's things like DNA spirals and proteins which really flick my beak. I'm always looking for information, particularly in medical journals where I found information of what it's like inside, little tiny things that you can't see. You put them under an electron photon microscope.
And
then
that influences you
Yeah.
to make these?
Yeah. I'm like a sieve. You put all this information in, and out comes these things. That's
So
it.
does color play any part in these things?
It's just starting to come back.
Because
Color.
when you were painting, were they colorful?
My color palette was day glow.
Do
it
I
was
have
very
anything in
vibrant.
here?
There are no paintings in
I
there.
don't have anything
No.
in here. I just
No.
have a sculpture.
Just have photographs of sculpture at the moment. The paintings seemed like a million years
I'm
ago.
going to show this because it shows an installation
Right.
from the
That's one of the very big
gallery.
pieces.
And you can talk about the pieces on the wall,
Right, the
how they
pieces.
stick out.
The pieces on the wall again developed from images that I found really about shamans in Africa who draw a particular kind of incantation or a spell or a prayer. They draw it in the dirt and then they make it really beautiful and work it, and they say their piece over it, and it's for whoever comes along to make their crops grow or whatever.
Oh, so it's African inspired?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, I like Japanese basketry an awful lot, and that's another inspiration.
Oh, I can see the I
Amoeba
didn't
strips.
think about it.
Yeah, I love Japanese
This
basketry.
is kind of like a beginning and a...
There's a piece I just did recently for a couple in the marina as a commission piece. It's about 9 feet
So
long.
this is what would have been on the inside, is
Right.
what you showed us, but you're using it as part of the sculpture.
Well, yeah, the couple wanted to see the kind of fragmentation between the covered up part and the part that's inside. So after discussions with them, this is what came up.
And this, same thing?
Shows some of the pieces in progress, shows the insides of them as they were being built in the studio this past year.
This is a work in progress,
Right.
where this one was...
That was also the
Also
work in
work in
progress. That
progress.
was the big giant pieces.
But this one was the finished.
That was the finish.
And the
yeah.
color is different.
Again, I worked with a client on this. They'd seen a piece I'd done a few years ago and liked some of the coloration, the striations of the wood that was in it. So this is what they wanted, and they were very, very happy with
I
it.
noticed that on some of them, the striations do show. I
A
don't
little
think we
bit,
can pick
yeah.
this up
Yeah,
on the camera, but these are the striations.
Just layers of wood that built.
And there's that many layers of wood on here?
On that one, I think there are 6 or 7 layers.
Is that
yeah.
one on top of the other
Yeah,
like
one
that?
on top of the other. It just gives it strength so it can stand up, and it's a very lightweight form.
So, with
This is kind of like a maquette or a model, so I can develop a larger piece from
that's
it.
what I was wondering. If you were making one of these, do you draw it first?
So, yeah, there are drawings, little scribbles, sketches, but they're not. I don't really do big drawings all the time. Depends. If a client wants to see it drawn first, if I'm doing a commission, then I'll do those drawings. But normally, for me to produce my shows of work, it goes straight from little drawings straight into the material.
But is it because of the way you twist it or turn it, or is it the information, the influence that you already have, so that it, whatever the finished product comes out is a compilation of things
It
within
is.
your
They're
brain?
a compilation of many things. Usually there are several little drawings, and then start with
Oh, you
actually
do several little drawings.
several little drawings. But
I
if you
see.
take this, it's like drawing in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
And a drawing on a paper will only say so much.
Oh,
But as soon
because-
as you do this, you've got something else going in 3D.
Oh, so you can untwist it. I see.
And then you can clamp it up onto another area, and you set and moving along with it.
Are these pieces supposed to be seen from different points of view, or if you have one on the wall, is that how you expect to see it, or?
If it's a wall-mounted piece, yes, it's the way I want to see it. That's the way it can be. But you can move them. Then they don't always stay in that position. I just did a piece for the Weissman Museum late last year, And the way I'd done it, it was kind of horizontal across the wall, but they liked it much more vertical, and it looked really powerful where it was.
Because there was a show of minimalism.
Correct.
At the Weissman Museum on the Pepperdine campus,
That was
right?
from last September to November.
Yeah. So in that show, you're totally thought of as a minimalist.
Kind
Or
of.
are you a minimalist?
I didn't set out to be a minimalist.
Oh,
I just
okay.
kind of got pushed in with them along the way.
With that.
Because of the nature of the materials that I'm using. It's very, very simple. It's very Zen-like. It's very clean.
But it seems like that's what this displays, that minimal quality.
It does. And I have no problem being part of that.
And the other idea about minimalism, and you're talking about Zen and et cetera, what else does that conjure up in your mind?
It's really about saying something that's that is known. One knows about these things, but you can't really see them, and I'm just trying to make them visible.
I see. Because that's how looking at this and having these pieces on the set has just generated such talk among the people in the studio and the guests, and they're the kind of things that you feel comfortable with.
In a way they are. They're like old friends. You know them. You know something about them. You kind of recognize some point in it, some facet.
Yeah.
And you can relate to it.
Yeah.
It has some kind of familiarity.
Yeah.
And I like that. Because
And we like that too. And we thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you to John Rose, and thank you to all of you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. These are so good.